The theme is punishment ever the answer? And A Course in Miracles always asks the question, what is it for? So what is punishment for? That's really what we're going to explore here together. We usually inflict punishment on another to teach them a lesson. But what is the lesson that we're teaching? So I ask you as a group, what is punishment for? Why do we punish another?
Teach a lesson.
Yeah, to teach them a lesson.
Yeah, maybe the thing that it could be to satisfy my needs in some way.
The one doing the punishment?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the beautiful things about doing a video is you can edit out a lot of long pauses, questions like that. So even this I will edit out. I'm going to go through this handout and ask the same questions that I asked you earlier. Who amongst you can honestly say, we've never been dishonest, had murderous thoughts, stolen something, gotten really angry, cheated, teased, betrayed or hit someone, or even killed a small animal? My father was a defense lawyer. He defended criminals in court, and he got very good at it. He even defended a couple of murderers and got them off. And one of them even said to my father afterwards, "I'll never commit another murder. It's far too dangerous." In preparing for this talk, I decided to read one of his books, and the book is called Guilty as Libeled, whatever that means. And of course, in the first 3 pages, I got some real pearls for this theme. And the key to this is that we're all the same. So I'd like to read a quote. "A criminal is a brother who has been found out, or in whom the conditions of life operated more harshly than with the normal." You know, people have had a very hard childhood. So my father also saw that basically we're all the same. A lot of his teachings in his book are in line with the Course in Miracles. And 4 of the most important questions that we could ask ourselves have you ever been punished? And how? And what for? 2, how were you treated when you did something wrong or what other people perceived as wrong? How were you punished? Number 3, what did you think or feel about yourself when you were punished? And finally, did punishment help? And if so, how? One of the beliefs in the world is that if someone is punished for a so-called crime, that it will not happen again, that they won't do it again. The reason this does not usually work is that punishment is addressing the behavior, which is the form, and not the mind, which is the content. The Course in Miracles is always reminding us about form and content and how we confuse the two. Course in Miracles never, ever, ever tries to change our behavior or teach us anything about our behavior. It's only about teaching us about the mind. We are always confusing form with content. What we do comes from what we think. So we need to work with the cause. I've been watching some of these alternative videos about the conspiracy theories, and what I notice is, and they're particularly made by Christians, incidentally, and what a number of them say is that when we get, the bad guys, we have to get all of them, so it never, ever, ever happens again. This is the belief. If we get them in punishment, it will never happen again. The paradox here, and the key point that we need to look at, is that if we punish someone, it is already happening again. We are simply making the same error, and in a way doing exactly what they are doing. Yes, the so-called bad guys in the world, whoever they are, a murderer, for example, needs to be stopped, right? Needs to be constrained in some way or restrained in some way. But what they really need, instead of punishment, is healing of the mind. Mind training, not punishment. Again, looking at the world, one of the reasons I'm doing these themes now is because I believe we're going through a huge storm in the world, as we notice in the news. A lot of things are happening and are going to accelerate. And I wanted to bring these themes out now to start to address what's really going on in the mind. So my question is, who are the bad guys in the world right now? There are many who are simply acting on their own. They simply want to do bad things. There are many who have been complicit willingly to someone else's agenda. So someone says, we should do this, and they just go along with it, even though they know somewhere that it's wrong. Many have been complicit without knowing that they were. Like many doctors prescribe medicine that's bad for you, and they don't even know it. So they're complicit without knowing. And many have been manipulated or threatened to comply, like many politicians, I believe, have been threatened to say certain things. So punishment simply perpetuates the problem. This is true about anything that we deem a crime, or a sin, or a wrongdoing in the world. And it's interesting to see that a thing that is allowed in one country can be deemed a crime or even a sin in another. It's all about perception. I've just been reading, just finished actually last night, just before I went to sleep, the Nelson Mandela's autobiography, and how he wanted to free himself and his people, and the white government, the apartheid regime, they put him in prison, and he was in prison for 27 years. But he also saw the innocence in all men, just like my father did, and like we are learning to do. Anyway, this is a quote from the very end of his book, just after the election, and he's sharing his last words. He said, "It was during those long and lonely years that my hunger for freedom of my own people became a hunger for the freedom of all people." That was his major shift, white and black. I knew as well as I knew anything that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred and guilt. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. I am not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom, just as surely as I am not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their humanity. So again, we're all the same. We must remember that all people involved in our lives, the good and the bad, the abuser and the abused, are part of the same sonship to which we belong. The strong temptation to exclude our abusers is the perfect opportunity to learn we but exclude ourselves. This is from A Course in Miracles. If only the victims deserve our sympathy, then we maintain the reality of the fragmented sonship, to the delight of everyone's ego. The abuser and victimizer are much in need of our sympathy, for who but the uncertain, lonely and fearful would ever seek to harm another? Course in Miracles even tells us there is a murderer in all of us. It is the all-inclusive nature of forgiveness which embraces all people without exception that makes the practice of A Course in Miracles so difficult and at the same time vitally important for our age. It may be necessary to stop a criminal, defend ourselves against one, and sometimes even to the point of killing another in order to stay alive, if you like. But we must always be aware of form and content. The form may look like defense or killing, but the content is sameness, compassion, and empathy for the victimizers, if one's able to do that in the moment, or as soon as possible. So now we're getting closer to the real purpose of punishment. You know, the surface is to teach someone a lesson, we think. That's the form we've given it to make it look good. Co-creation. Every situation is a co-created situation. Now we're getting to the core of the Course in Miracles teaching about the ego script. Secretly, we want to be innocent victims. We want to be punished. Because we think we're guilty from separating from God. This is underneath everything. So secretly, we want to be the innocent victim and then turn the tables and become the victimizer and punish them. And then become the innocent, and then they become the innocent victims. So this is the role that we're playing. You know, people are doing bad things to us, so we want to punish them, and then they become the innocent victims, and we become the victimizers. They cannot do this without us, and vice versa. It's a co-created situation. And now the real purpose. Remember the ego script of sin, guilt, and fear, of separating from God, and the attempt of everyone's ego mind to get rid of the guilt. So we have to find the bad guy and project the blame onto, and so we think to get rid of the guilt. So this is what punishment is all about. We're all looking for the bad guy, and if we find the murderer, it doesn't really matter who it is, whether it's the one that actually did a murder or not. As long as we find a bad guy and they get punished, we feel good for a moment. And we think we're getting rid of our guilt. We don't even know we have the guilt, but that's what's driving it underneath. There's a couple of sections in A Course in Miracles about what it calls true justice. In the world, justice really is a kind of revenge. You've done something and I'm going to get justice and have you punished. This is how we see it. There is a kind of justice, or true justice, in salvation which the world knows nothing of. To the world, justice and vengeance are the same. Justice and revenge are the same. For sinners, see justice only as their punishment. So if I've committed a crime, I think I deserve to be punished and receive justice. I'll read the whole sentence. To the world, justice and vengeance are the same. For sinners, see justice only as their punishment, perhaps sustained by another, but not escaped. Now what that means is if you're not punished by another, you feel guilty for your crime, so you punish yourself. Guilt actually is the only real punishment. The laws of sin demand a victim. This is the ego script. The laws of sin demand a victim. Who it may be makes little difference. We don't really mind if we found the right bad guy or not. But death must be the cost and must be paid. Death being the ultimate punishment. We think. We do a whole workshop on death and dying. We think that death is the ultimate punishment. Actually, death is a reprieve. Being in jail for 27 years, that's punishment. But because we think we're a body, we think death is a punishment, but it's actually not. This is not true justice, but insanity. Yet how could justice be defined without insanity in a world where love means hate and death is seen as victory and a triumph over eternity and timelessness and life? So the justice in the world is actually insanity, that's what it's saying. And another quote, I've left out some of the sentences because it's a little difficult to understand the wording. You who know not of true justice can still ask and learn the answer. True justice looks on all in the same way. Again, we're all the same. True justice demands no sacrifice. For sacrifice is made that sin may be preserved and kept. Like I said before, we're perpetuating the problem when we punish another. It is a payment offered for the cost of sin. And worldly justice, being blind, is satisfied by being paid. So as long as someone pays, we're fine. It matters not by whom. And there's a couple of lessons in the course that you could read that could help deepen into this. One is lesson 135 that says, if I defend myself, I am attacked. And lesson 153, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. Defenses are the costliest of all the prices which the ego would exact on another. There is no real awakening in any form of worldly justice or punishment. What we must do is rise above the battlefield, forgive and see that we're all the same, playing out the ego dream together.